The contract that no one would take. The crimson lighting of Omega-7 station cast long shadows across the private meeting room where fortunes were made and lives were bought. Zephyr Kett, the wealthiest Vorthak industrialist in 3 sectors, sat across from a figure whose face remained hidden beneath a dark hood. Between them lay a datapad displaying the image of a human woman with kind eyes and a determined smile. Captain Elena Vasquez, Kett said, his forearms gesturing with barely contained rage. This human has cost my family's shipping empire billions of credits in the past year alone. Her innovative trade routes and fair dealing practices are turning our clients against us. She must be eliminated. The broker, as the hooded figure was known throughout the criminal underworld, studied the datapad with interest. Elena Vasquez commanded a small but efficient trading vessel called the Meridian's Hope. Her crew consisted of only 12 humans, yet they had somehow managed to outmaneuver Kett's massive corporate fleet time and again. The payment will be substantial, Kett continued, sliding a credit chip across the table. 50 million galactic credits, enough to buy a small fleet. The broker picked up the chip and verified its authenticity. The amount was indeed staggering, more than most planets saw in annual trade revenue. Yet something about the contract made him pause. "Why come to me?" the broker asked, his voice artificially modulated to hide his species. "Surely a businessman of your standing has other resources." Kett's compound eyes darkened. "I have tried conventional methods. Corporate sabotage, legal challenges, economic pressure. The human adapts to everything. She finds new partners, discovers alternative routes, turns my own tactics against me. It is as if she knows my every move before I make it." The broker nodded slowly. He had heard similar stories before, though he had never quite believed them. Humans were relatively new to galactic commerce, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 2 centuries ago. They were physically unremarkable compared to species like the warrior Draknari or the psychically gifted Zelosians. Yet stories of their unexpected capabilities had been circulating through criminal networks for decades. "I will need time to arrange the proper contractors," the broker said finally. "A target of this complexity requires specialists." 3 days later, the broker sat in the same room with Master Assassin Thylex of the Shadow Guild. Thylex was widely regarded as the most skilled killer in known space, a being whose species was so rare that few had ever seen one of his kind. His elongated form moved with liquid grace, and his large black eyes missed nothing. "The target is human," the broker explained, showing Thylex the same datapad. The assassin's reaction was immediate and unexpected. Thylex stood abruptly, his form seeming to ripple in the dim light. "I cannot accept this contract." "The payment is 50 million credits," the broker pressed. "More than you have earned in the past 5 years combined." "The payment is irrelevant," Thylex replied, his voice carrying an odd note of what might have been fear. "I do not take contracts on humans. No member of the Shadow Guild will take contracts on humans. Find another solution." Before the broker could respond, Thylex had vanished into the shadows, leaving only the faint scent of ozone behind. Confused but determined, the broker reached out to other assassin guilds across the galaxy. The Crimson Blade Syndicate, known for their brutal efficiency, refused without explanation. The Phantom Collective, masters of poison and subterfuge, declined to even meet about the contract. Even independent killers who worked outside the guild system turned down the offer. Each refusal was accompanied by the same cryptic advice: "Find another target. Humans are off limits." Growing frustrated, the broker decided to investigate why every professional killer in the galaxy seemed terrified of targeting a single human woman. His research led him to archive news reports from 15 years ago, buried deep in the galactic information networks. The Meridian incident, as it came to be known, began with what should have been a simple piracy operation. A notorious raider named Captain Vex Shadowclaw had attacked a human research vessel conducting scientific surveys near the Meridian Nebula. The ship carried no valuable cargo, only a small crew of scientists and their families. The pirates killed everyone aboard except for one man, Dr. Jonathan Hayes, a xenobiologist whose wife and young daughter had been among the victims. Hades had been left for dead, but he survived long enough to send a distress signal before the pirates destroyed his ship. What followed became known as the Terran Vengeance throughout criminal circles. Hayes had no military training, no powerful allies, and no significant resources. He was a middle-aged scientist who studied alien plant life. Yet within 6 months, Captain Shadowclaw's entire pirate organization had been systematically destroyed. Hayes had done something that should have been impossible for a single individual. He had tracked down every member of Shadowclaw's crew across dozens of star systems. He had learned their identities, their hideouts, their weaknesses. One by one, he had eliminated them using methods that ranged from subtle poisoning to explosive sabotage. The most disturbing part of the story was how Hayes had accomplished this feat. He had not worked alone, despite appearing to do so. Other humans throughout the galaxy had quietly provided assistance. Trade captains had shared information about pirate movements. Colonial officials had delayed security responses at crucial moments. Human scientists had provided technical expertise for Hayes' improvised weapons. It was as if every human in space had become part of a vast, invisible network dedicated to helping Hayes achieve his revenge. The pirates found themselves facing not one grieving father, but an entire species that had decided their crimes would not go unpunished. Captain Shadowclaw himself had been found in his heavily fortified base on the edge of known space. The official report listed the cause of death as catastrophic life support failure, but survivors from the base told a different story. They spoke of a mild-mannered scientist who had walked through their defenses as if they did not exist, who had spoken quietly with their captain for several minutes before leaving him to die alone in his sealed command chamber. The incident had established what criminals now called the Terran Protocol. Humans were not to be targeted for assassination or kidnapping. Their seemingly harmless nature was deceptive. They possessed an uncanny ability to work together across vast distances, sharing information and resources in ways that other species found incomprehensible. The broker finished reading the archive reports and sat back in his chair. The refusals from the assassin guilds suddenly made perfect sense. They were not motivated by cowardice, but by practical business considerations. Taking a contract on a human meant risking not just the target, but potentially facing retaliation from every human in the galaxy. He returned to Zephyrin Ket with his findings, but the Vorthak industrialist was not interested in historical warnings. Superstitious nonsense, Ket dismissed with a wave of his upper arms. One incident 15 years ago does not make an entire species untouchable. I am not asking you to kill a scientist's family. I want you to eliminate a single traitor who is destroying my business. The assassin guilds will not take the contract, the broker explained. Even independent operators refuse to consider it. Ket leaned forward, his compound eyes glittering with desperation and greed. Then we will find someone who is not bound by their superstitions. There are mercenary companies that specialize in difficult targets. Rogue military units that work outside the law. Surely some of them will be motivated by the right price. The broker sighed. He had seen this pattern before. Wealthy clients who refused to accept that some targets were beyond reach, who kept escalating their offers until they destroyed themselves in pursuit of the impossible. I can make inquiries, he said finally. But I advise you to reconsider. The stories about humans may sound like superstition, but they are based on documented events. There is a reason why even the most ruthless killers in the galaxy avoid targeting them. Ket's mandibles clicked together in a gesture of dismissal. Find me someone willing to do the job. I do not care about their species or their methods. I only care about results. As the broker left the meeting room, he wondered if Zephyrin Ket understood what he was setting in motion. The Vorthak industrialist saw only a business rival to be eliminated. He did not realize he was declaring war on something far more dangerous than a single human traitor. Across the galaxy, Captain Elena Vasquez continued her regular trading runs, unaware that her life had been marked for termination. She negotiated fair deals with alien merchants, delivered supplies to remote colonies, and maintained the friendly relationships that made her business so successful. But she was not truly alone in the vast emptiness of space. Other human ships tracked her movements from a distance, ready to provide assistance if needed. Colonial administrators monitored her communications for signs of trouble. Even human tourists and researchers on various worlds kept watch for anything that might threaten one of their own. The network that had avenged Dr. Hayes' family was still active, still protective, and still utterly invisible to those who had never experienced its power. Zephyr Kett was about to learn why even the assassins said no when the target was human. When legends become reality, the mercenary ship Devastation's Edge drifted silently through the asteroid field of the Kepler system, its crew of 40 battle-hardened aliens preparing for what their commander assured them would be an easy kill. Warlord Krax, a massive Draknari warrior whose scarred hide told the story of 100 victories, studied the tactical display showing their target's approach vector. One small trading vessel, Krax rumbled to his lieutenants. 12 crew members, minimal defensive capabilities. We strike fast, eliminate the captain, and withdraw before any authorities arrive. The payment from Zephyr Kett had been too substantial to ignore. 50 million credits could outfit the mercenary company with enough weapons and ships to become a major power in the Outer Rim territories. Krax had dismissed the warnings about targeting humans as the cowardly superstitions of assassins who had grown soft from their comfortable guild memberships. Elena Vasquez guided the Meridian's Hope through the asteroid field with practiced ease, her navigator Marcus Chen calling out course corrections as they navigated toward the mining station where they planned to deliver medical supplies. The journey should have been routine, just another stop on their regular circuit through the frontier colonies. Captain, reported communications officer Lisa Park from her station, I'm detecting some unusual comm chatter in this system. Encrypted military-grade transmissions. Elena frowned. The Kepler system was supposed to be peaceful, populated only by miners and researchers who had no need for military communications. Source: unknown. The signals are heavily scrambled, but the transmission patterns suggest coordination between multiple vessels. Before Elena could respond, the ship's proximity alarms began blaring. On the main view screen, a massive warship emerged from the shadow of a nearby asteroid, its weapons systems already charging. Battle stations, Elena shouted, though she knew their light trading vessel stood little chance against a military-grade warship. Lisa, send out a distress signal on all human frequencies. The attack came swiftly and brutally. The Devastation's Edge fired precise shots that disabled the Meridian's Hope's engines without destroying the ship entirely. Krax wanted to board the vessel and personally eliminate Captain Vasquez to prove to his crew that humans were no different from any other prey. What the Draknari warlord did not know was that Elena Vasquez had served 8 years as a tactical officer in the Colonial Defense Force before becoming a trader. Her crew consisted not of civilian merchants, but of former military personnel who had chosen peaceful careers after completing their service. When the boarding pods attached to their hull, they were ready. The mercenaries expected to find terrified traders cowering in their quarters. Instead, they encountered organized resistance from defenders who had transformed their cargo bays into kill zones and their corridors into defensive positions. Elena's crew fought with the disciplined coordination of trained soldiers, using their intimate knowledge of the ship's layout to maximum advantage. How are they doing this? Krax demanded over the comm as his assault teams reported heavy casualties. They are supposed to be merchants. Meanwhile, Lisa Park's distress signal had been received by more than just local authorities. Within minutes, human vessels throughout the sector began altering their courses for the Kepler system. Captain David Morrison of the cargo hauler New Horizons was 3 hours away, but immediately engaged his emergency drives. Dr. Sarah Chen, conducting research on a nearby space station, began coordinating with Colonial Defense Force units in adjacent systems. The human network that had remained dormant since the Meridian incident was awakening once again. Across dozens of star systems, humans began making subtle adjustments to their activities. Trade schedules were altered to bring ships closer to Kepler. Scientific surveys were postponed so that research vessels could respond to the crisis. Even human passengers on alien ships began quietly gathering information about mercenary activities in the region. Commander Marcus Reed, Elena's former commanding officer now stationed at a frontier base, received word of the attack within 30 minutes. He immediately authorized the deployment of a quick response squadron, then began making calls to human contacts throughout the military and civilian sectors. The battle aboard the Meridian's Hope continued for 2 hours. Elena's crew, though outnumbered 3-1, managed to hold critical sections of their ship while inflicting devastating casualties on the attackers. Engineer Tom Bradley had rigged the ship's fusion reactor to overload if the mercenaries attempted to seize the engine room. Security Chief Rebecca Stone led a fighting withdrawal through the ship's maintenance tunnels, striking at the invaders from unexpected angles. Krax himself led the final assault on the bridge, determined to complete his mission despite the mounting losses. He found Elena waiting for him, armed with a standard-issue pulse rifle and wearing the expression of someone who had no intention of surrendering. "You have cost me half my crew, human," the Dragnari snarled, his own weapon trained on her. "But the contract will be fulfilled." "Will it?" Elena asked calmly. "Take a look at your tactical display." Krax glanced at the nearby monitor and felt his blood turn cold. The display showed 15 human vessels converging on the Kepler system from multiple directions. Cargo ships, research vessels, and even a few pleasure craft were approaching at maximum speed, their civilian status masking the fact that many carry former military personnel and concealed weapons. "Your ship is damaged," Elena continued. "Half your crew is dead or wounded, and you're about to face the combined response of every human within 50 light years. Still think this was an easy contract?" The Dragnari warlord hesitated for the first time in his long career. He had expected to kill one traitor and withdraw quickly. Instead, he found himself trapped in a prolonged battle against enemies who fought with unexpected skill and coordination. Worse, the approaching human vessels represented a threat he had not anticipated. "Stand down, Krax." The voice came from the ship's communication system. Commander Reed's image appeared on the main screen, his Colonial Defense Force uniform carrying the authority of the human military. "This is your only warning. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." "Empty threats," Krax replied, though his voice lacked conviction. "You are too far away to intervene." "Am I?" Reed smiled coldly. "Check your long-range sensors." The display updated to show additional contacts emerging from hyperspace. 3 Colonial Defense Force destroyers had arrived at the edge of the system and were rapidly closing the distance. Behind them, more human vessels continued to arrive as word of the attack spread through the invisible network that connected their species. For the first time in his career, Warlord Krax found himself facing a tactical situation where retreat was the only sensible option. The simple assassination contract had somehow escalated into a confrontation with what appeared to be a significant portion of human space forces. "This is not over," he told Elena as his remaining troops began withdrawing to their ship. "Yes, it is," she replied. "You just don't realize it yet." The Devastation's edge limped away from the battle, leaving behind nearly half its crew and any hope of collecting payment from Zefran Kett. But Krax's problems were just beginning. Word of the failed attack spread quickly through both criminal and legitimate channels, carried by the same human network that had organized the defense. Human trade captains began reporting the location and activities of Krax's mercenary company to local authorities wherever they operated. Colonial officials started investigating his past contracts and discovering evidence of previous crimes. Even alien partners began distancing themselves from the Dragnari warlord as it became clear that associating with him meant facing economic pressure from human businesses throughout the sector. Dr. Sarah Chen coordinated with human scientists across the galaxy to compile a comprehensive dossier on Krax's organization. Every planet where his mercenaries had operated, every crime they had committed, every ally who had supported them. The information was quietly shared with law enforcement agencies and military commands, turning Krax from a successful mercenary leader into one of the most wanted criminals in known space. Within weeks, the once mighty mercenary company had been reduced to a handful of ships fleeing from system to system, unable to find safe harbor anywhere in civilized space. Krax finally understood what the assassins had tried to warn him about. Targeting humans meant facing not just the intended victim, but an entire species that would mobilize its resources to protect one of their own. Zefran Kett received news of the mercenaries' failure with growing panic. His shipping empire was already suffering from the economic pressure that Elena Vasquez's fair trading practices had created. Now he faced the additional problem of having openly declared war on humanity itself. Human trade agreements with Ket's alien partners began experiencing unexpected complications. Shipping manifests were delayed by additional inspections. Routes through human-controlled space required expensive permits and security deposits. Insurance rates for vessels doing business with Vorthak companies mysteriously increased across the board. The broker, who had tried to warn Ket about the dangers of targeting humans, found himself blacklisted by every reputable criminal organization in the galaxy. Word had spread that he had been involved in arranging the contract, and even hardened criminals wanted nothing to do with someone who had been foolish enough to facilitate an attack on humanity. As Elena Vasquez resumed her trading runs under the discreet protection of the human network, she reflected on the strange nature of her species. Individually, humans might seem unremarkable compared to the physically powerful or psychically gifted alien races, but together, they possess something that their enemies consistently underestimated: the ability to coordinate their efforts across vast distances and diverse circumstances. The attack on the Meridian's hope had failed not because of superior technology or individual heroism, but because humans understood that an attack on one of them was an attack on all of them. This understanding had transformed a simple business dispute into a conflict that Zephyr Ket could never win. The industrialist's desperate search for someone willing to eliminate Elena Vasquez was about to take an even more dangerous turn as he prepared to make his final, most foolish gamble: the final hunt and ultimate truth. Desperation had transformed Zephyr Ket from a successful businessman into something far more dangerous, a cornered predator with nothing left to lose. His shipping empire lay in ruins, dismantled piece by piece by the systematic economic pressure that humans throughout the galaxy had brought to bear against his operations. Insurance companies refused to cover his vessels, trade partners had abandoned their contracts, and even his own Vorthak government was distancing itself from his increasingly erratic behavior. In his private office aboard his last remaining flagship, Ket stared at a communication from the most expensive and ethically flexible organization he had been able to find: the Extinction Protocol Syndicate. Unlike the traditional assassin guilds or mercenary companies, the EPS specialized in targets that others considered impossible to eliminate. Their methods were brutal, their success rate was perfect, and their fees reflected their willingness to accept contracts that more reasonable organizations would refuse. The price is 1 billion credits, the syndicate's representative had explained during their encrypted meeting. Paid in advance, non-refundable regardless of outcome. The target will be eliminated within 30 days, along with anyone who attempts to interfere. Ket had liquidated his remaining assets to meet their demands, selling his personal estates, his art collection, and even his family's ancestral holdings. The payment would leave him financially ruined even if the assassination succeeded, but he no longer cared about money. His obsession with destroying Elena Vasquez had consumed every rational thought. The Extinction Protocol team that descended on the frontier world of New Geneva consisted of 12 beings from species specifically selected for their immunity to human psychological warfare. Synthetic intelligences that felt no fear or compassion, psychic dampeners that could resist mental influence, biological weapons designed to target human physiology. They had studied the Meridian incident and the failure of Krax's mercenaries, adapting their methods to counter the human advantages that had proven decisive in previous encounters. Elena Vasquez had chosen New Geneva as the site for a major trade conference, bringing together human merchants and alien partners to establish new commercial agreements. The colony world was lightly defended, populated mainly by farmers and researchers who had come to study the planet's unique ecosystem. It seemed like the perfect opportunity to eliminate the target in a setting where her death would send a clear message to other humans about the price of interference in Vorthak business interests. What the Extinction Protocol team failed to understand was that Elena had not chosen New Geneva randomly. The colony world had been settled primarily by retired Colonial Defense Force personnel who had earned the right to claim farmland through their military service. Beneath the peaceful surface of agricultural communities lay a network of veterans who maintained their weapons training and stayed in contact with active duty units. The first sign that something was wrong came when the syndicate's infiltration team discovered that their target was not staying in the colony's main city, but at a rural farm owned by Colonel Maria Santos, Alina's former mentor and commanding officer. The farm appeared to be a simple agricultural operation, but closer inspection revealed defensive positions that had been carefully concealed within the landscape. "This is not a farm," reported the team leader, a synthetic intelligence designated as Unit Prime. "This is a military fortification disguised as agricultural infrastructure." The assessment was accurate. New Geneva's farming communities had been designed by military engineers who understood that frontier colonies needed to be able to defend themselves against various threats. Underground bunkers connected the settlements through a network of tunnels. Communication arrays disguised as irrigation equipment linked the planet to early warning systems throughout the sector. Even the farm equipment had been modified to serve dual purposes in case of emergency. When the Extinction Protocol team launched their assault, they encountered immediate and coordinated resistance from defenders who had been expecting them. Alina Vasquez herself had served as bait, deliberately exposing herself to draw the assassins into a trap that had been months in the planning. The battle for New Geneva lasted 3 days and became a case study in how humans approached asymmetric warfare. The colonists did not attempt to match their enemy's superior technology or exotic capabilities. Instead, they used their knowledge of the local terrain, their ability to coordinate multiple defensive positions, and their willingness to sacrifice individual advantage for collective success. Unit Prime found itself facing an enemy that seemed to anticipate its tactical algorithms. Every move the synthetic made was countered by defenders who had studied its specifications and developed specific countermeasures. When it attempted to use overwhelming firepower to break through defensive positions, the humans simply melted away into their tunnel networks and emerged behind it. The psychic dampeners discovered that their mental shields were useless against opponents who relied on encrypted communication networks rather than telepathic coordination. The biological weapons found that their human-specific toxins were ineffective against enemies who had been vaccinated with compounds developed specifically to counter such attacks. But the most devastating aspect of the human defense was not their tactical preparation or technological countermeasures. It was the way news of the attack spread through their species' invisible communication network, bringing reinforcements from across the galaxy with a speed that defied all rational analysis. Dr. Sarah Chen, now recognized as one of the coordinators of the Human Protective Network, sat in her laboratory on distant Alpha Station monitoring the battle through a dozen different communication channels. Her screens displayed real-time updates from human observers throughout the sector, creating a comprehensive picture of the tactical situation on New Geneva. Epsilon's squadron is 3 hours out, she reported to the other network coordinators. Gamma Wing will arrive in 5 hours. The cargo convoy from Tau Ceti has weapons and medical supplies. What impressed Chen most was not the military response, but the civilian coordination. Human traders throughout the sector had quietly altered their routes to bring them closer to New Geneva. Research vessels had discovered urgent reasons to investigate phenomena in nearby systems. Even human passengers on alien ships had begun gathering intelligence about Extinction Protocol activities and sharing it through encrypted networks. Commander Marcus Reed, leading the official Colonial Defense Force response, marveled at the intelligence reports flowing in from human civilians who had somehow managed to track the movements of one of the galaxy's most secretive organizations. Restaurant workers on space stations reported serving meals to suspicious customers. Maintenance technicians noticed unusual modifications to ships in various ports. Even human children playing in alien cities had observed conversations that revealed EPS planning sessions. The network was not a formal organization with ranks and command structures. It was something far more organic and resilient, a species-wide commitment to mutual protection that operated below the threshold of official recognition. Every human understood that their individual safety depended on the collective willingness to help others in need. On the 3rd day of the battle, as Colonial Defense Force reinforcements arrived to find the Extinction Protocol team already defeated by local defenders, Unit Prime transmitted its final report before its systems shut down permanently. Target elimination unsuccessful. Human defensive capabilities significantly underestimated. Species demonstrates unprecedented coordination across multiple organizational levels. Recommend permanent classification as unsustainable target category. The destruction of the Extinction Protocol team sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld. If even the most ruthless and technologically advanced assassins could not eliminate a single human without facing species-wide retaliation, then the Terran Protocol was not merely superstition, but practical necessity. Zephyr Kett received news of the failure while hiding in the cargo hold of a smuggler's ship, having been forced to flee Vortex space when his government issued a warrant for his arrest. His obsession with destroying Elena Vasquez had cost him everything: his fortune, his business empire, his political connections, and finally his freedom. The human network that had mobilized to protect Elena Vasquez did not simply return to normal activities after the threat was eliminated. Instead, they began a systematic investigation of Kett's remaining resources and associates. Human accountants discovered hidden assets that Vorthic authorities had missed. Human investigators compiled evidence of his various crimes and shared it with law enforcement agencies across the galaxy. Human traders used their commercial connections to ensure that anyone who had supported Kett's vendetta found themselves unable to operate in human-controlled space. Within 6 months, Zephyr Kett was captured by bounty hunters who had been provided with detailed intelligence about his whereabouts by human observers on dozens of different worlds. His trial became a galactic sensation, not for the crimes he had committed, but for the testimony it provided about the extent and effectiveness of human cooperation. Elena Vasquez herself testified about the network that had protected her, though she was careful not to reveal operational details that might compromise future security. Humans understand something that other species often miss, she explained to the mixed jury of alien representatives. We are not the strongest or the smartest or the most technologically advanced species in the galaxy, but we are the most committed to taking care of each other. When you attack one of us, you are not just threatening an individual. You are challenging a fundamental principle that defines who we are as a people. The trial established legal precedents that reinforced the practical wisdom of the Terran Protocol. Attacking humans was not just dangerous because of their defensive capabilities, but because it inevitably led to economic, political, and social consequences that could destroy entire criminal organizations. Years later, in the same smoky tavern on Omega 7 where the story had begun, a new generation of assassins and mercenaries gathered to hear the warnings passed down by their predecessors. The tale of Zephyr Kett's obsession and Elena Vasquez's survival had become legend, but it was a legend based on documented facts. Even the assassins said no, the old-timers would tell the newcomers, because they understood what Kett never learned. Humans do not fight like other species. They do not compete like other species. When you threaten one of them, you face all of them. And that is a war that no one can win. The human network continued to operate throughout the galaxy, invisible to those who had never experienced its protection, obvious to those who had learned to respect its power. It served as a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous enemies were not the ones with the biggest weapons or the most advanced technology, but the ones who understood that true strength came from unity and that some prey was simply too dangerous to hunt. Elena Vasquez continued her trading runs, bringing fair deals and honest commerce to worlds throughout the frontier. She rarely spoke about the events on New Geneva or the network that had saved her life, but she knew, as every human knew, that she was never truly alone in the vast emptiness of space. Somewhere among the stars, others of her kind were watching, ready to help when help was needed, ready to stand together against any threat that dared to challenge one of their own. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Even the assassins said no when the target was human, because they understood what Zephyr Kett had discovered too late. Targeting humans was not just dangerous, it was a death sentence.